Hey guys, back out in the workshop today, and today's going to be another tool repair video. Today what I'm working on is this big guy. It's called shear wrench, Makita shear wrench, also called a TC gun, so torsion control or tension control. This is to torque structural bolts, and what it does is it reaches from one side, it holds the bolt in place with this center bore, and it tightens up the nut until it actually shears off the end tab of the bolt so that it knows that it's reached the proper tension. Now, as you can see, I have several TC guns here, and I've got lots of spare parts. I've got a few machines that have different issues. This one here, I was told the head is seized, so we're going to open that up and see what's going on in there. This one, it says head not working, and the last one you can see the head is already disassembled. Part of these spare parts are from that machine. And I've also got a few replacement inserts. So these are the 3/4 bolt inserts that we use. So I may be changing some of those. That might be some of the problem that we have with these machines. They tend to jam up over time, especially since we paint a lot of the structural steel with primer, and that gets on the inside of the little insert here and jams it up. Now, before we go too far, similar to my grinder repair video, we're just going to pull out the brushes, and I'll show you how easy those come out, and you can change those. And if you did have issues with the motor not running well, the same rules that apply to the grinder repair video apply to this. So we could just take that whole armature apart, clean up the commutator like we did, put some new brushes in, and that should solve most of the problems when it comes to the motor. We also have a trigger here, so there's a switch inside of there. So we'll open that up and we'll look quickly at if we were needing to replace that switch, what would be involved with that. And then finally we'll start working on the head and take this apart. We'll give it a good cleaning, we'll inspect all the parts and put it together, hopefully in the correct order and hopefully working in the end. All right, so let's get started. Now, I don't have a manual for this, but I do have parts breakdowns off of Makita's website, so that'll help me make sure I get everything put in the correct order, just in case it does get mixed up. And we can see if anything was damaged or if there's missing pieces. I've got a few highlighted here. I was going through and looking at what I would need to rebuild that last TC gun, so I'll be using that from time to time to make sure that I get everything in the correct order. So the first thing we're going to look at quickly is just the brushes. Very similar to what you'd see on most Makita tools. Flathead screwdriver takes off the cap of the brushes. You pull that off. And you can just pull out that brush. And these are pretty standard brush. I don't know the part number. I'm sure I could grab it from that parts diagram. I'll leave it in the description if any of you guys are interested. We can see here this one is quite worn, so I will be replacing those. I don't have any spares right now, but I'll order some in. And replacing that brush, you simply just pop it back in there. The new one, give it a push down, throw the cap back on. This has the double-sided caps that the 9005B grinder has. So if you do strip one, flip it over and you can use the other side. So that's the brush. Next, let's have a look at the switch. This would be the same process if you wanted to replace the power cord. See here, this one is missing a plug end, so I'll replace that later. This cord's in pretty bad shape, so I'll likely replace that before this goes back into service. So we've got two screws here. Take those out, those are Phillips screws. We've got 3mm Allen screws here. powers just pop right off. Okay, so we could look in here at the switch. So the switch has this little separate switch mechanism that just hinges inside of there. And there's another little switch here. And here's the main power switch. Now we can see the switch is a double pole switch. So both the hot and the neutral are switched. Makita, I've seen this in the past where some grinder models only use part of the switch and they have the neutral connected all the time. That way there, if you do have issues with the switch in the future, the switch wearing out, you can just move those hot connections to the other side of the switch, leave the neutrals connected together, and that'll lengthen the life of the switch. So you essentially get two uses out of it. Now replacing the power cord, be as simple as just unscrewing this little strain relief, disconnecting the wires here, putting new connectors on and reconnecting it. But I'm just going to close this back up for now. So the cover goes back on. Put the Allen screws back in. And that would be replaced. Now before we head to the head mechanism, we're just going to take this apart quickly and I'll show you how easy it is to get up the armature on this. So again, take out those Allen screws. And now if we were looking to do some work on the armature, we'll take the other half of the handle off. So we'll flip that over, take those two other screws out. Got the other half of the handle off. Now to get at the armature, we'll take these 4 Allen screws out. There's a rubber cap here, out of the way. Pull, wiggle, see here, this unit was dropped. There's a little broken piece there. It's broken here as well. They have a hard life. See here the armature, the commutator, and if you needed to, you could clean this really nicely with some fine sandpaper, clean out the spaces in between the segments, replace those brushes. If you have issues with the bearings, you can replace those. These are a real common size. I usually keep spares of those. If you turn this, you can see there's a lot of resistance in here. Oh, but it's still turning, so there's a chance that head is not seized, but definitely not moving nicely. So we'll see when we get there. So I'm just going to pull these brushes out before I put that back in. Probably would have been a good idea to pull these out before I took the armature out. I like to use a little dental tool to pull these out. Alright, so that is how you get at the commutator. Just slide that back in. Give that a little tap. And then we're just going to replace those bolts. Then the two Phillips screws back. Then the brushes. Like I said, this is where you would be putting in new brushes. I don't have any with me, but I will be putting some new ones before it goes back into service. Put her back on. Alright, so that's back together. So we looked at how to replace the switch. Replace the power cord would be the same way, and how to take the cover off so that we can access between the commutator, look at the armature and the windings. Now we're going to jump onto the head and we're going to have a look at that. So the majority of the maintenance that you'll be doing on one of these is changing the inner or outer heads as they wear out from torquing bolts. Over time they could wear, especially the inner one. We've got two set screws here. So first we'll remove one, flip it over, remove the second one. You can see as we loosen it, the head moves forward because there's springs inside of there. Give this a pull. So this is the outer head, which you may have to replace. You can see there's definitely some wear on this one. And then here's the inner one. And these vary by size. Actually, it looks like there might be a part missing in there. So this is a new one from Makita. So if we look at these, there's definitely a little piece missing. So that was probably a problem with that. But we want to dig a little deeper. So we're going to move on to the next step. We're going to remove this spring. I'm just going to pull out this little pin inside. Pin with a spring comes out. Next we have a washer here. It's like a little lock washer that you have to remove. Kind of like a spring. Just pry up on it and it kind of spirals out of the way. Get that off. So now that we have that off, there's this big spacer that comes off. And then we should have another one of those little spiral lock rings here. Just find the end of it right here. Back up on that. There we go. Got that loose now. So just work it out. Slowly. Okay, so I got the second spiral lock out. This should just come right out. A little wiggle. Maybe a little persuasion. Just keep working around so it comes out almost there. This one could be a little more difficult just that it's seized up. There, we've almost got it. Alright, so we can see here this is quite rusty, yet quite full of caked on grease. It's not looking pretty. It must have got wet at one point. Bearing's not working very good. Spacer. Oh yeah, we can see it's a nice mess inside of there. Let's get a better grip. There it goes. So I can see this thing. Well, it's not seized solid, but it's definitely not moving very well. This one too, some really rusty, dirty grease. And we've got our washer on the inside. Alright, so we're all the way into the gears. I'm just going to spray that with some brake cleaner and try to get a better look at those gears to see what kind of shape they're in, to see if it's worth rebuilding. So I'm just going to clean that up now, off camera. Okay, so I've got all that cleaned up. Got a lot cleaner, but I tried pulling out the inner gear assembly, like planetary gear assembly, and it's really jammed in there. It does not want to come out. So I think what I'm going to do is completely disassemble the head. I was hoping I could do everything from the working end, but I may have to take out the armature and everything, and it might be better considering how seized this thing is. I'm just going to completely disassemble it. It might be better for the video too if you guys are running across a similar problem. So I'm just going to jump in the back here, remove this back cover. You can see that it's been off before because there's some screws missing, but there's normally 4 screws here. This cover comes off, and then we've got like a little metal clip inside of here. We'll take that out, and just above it a little spring. Just grab that, a little tick. So there's our spring. That's out of there. Now, back to what we did earlier, we're going to have to remove the armature. So this time I will take the brushes out early. Let's get that out. That off. See, there's a little pin here that should help with disassembly. Not sure if that'll release this back cap. Maybe. So it's coming. Yep. So there, we finally got that back cap off. That's good. You can see some water in there as well. Some rust. Have a peek. And we can see the pinion gear in there. This is still stuck in place. It will not come out. Oh, just move. There we go. So this guy here was really jammed in there. That looks terrible. Wow. I mean, I'm sure I can clean that up and reuse that. I'll keep them as spares, but I've got some much nicer gears there. And if we look down, there's a little bearing in there. I'm surprised what kind of shape he's in. Not terrible, actually. It's really dirty. Now we can see as we turn that armature, the gear turns. So I'm going to get my wire brush and brake cleaner, and we're going to clean that right to the bottom. Okay, so I managed to clean at the back of this unit. And if you look right at the bottom there, this will be hard to zoom in on. Let me put some flash on. There we go. I'll focus back there. Right at the back of these gears. It's really hard to see, but these gears, the teeth should run continuously to the back. And just at the bottom here, all along that bottom ridge, at the back, the teeth are worn out. So that bottom gear that was difficult to get out must have been hung up on the back of those gears. So those teeth are in rough shape. So this head is no longer any good. I'm gonna keep the armature. I'm gonna keep multiple parts off of it. The handle and everything are still good. So I'm gonna use all of that stuff. But I think for to finish this repair, I'm gonna grab this guy. You can see the teeth on this one. It's really clean. They're in really good shape. So we're gonna use this for the rest of this video. Unfortunately, sometimes tools are beyond repair, and that was a good example. All right, so I've got this guy all disassembled so that we're in the same spot that we were before you discover the other one was in bad shape. Now if we look here, spin this, you can see the pinion works nice. See on the other side, the gear turns nice. This can turn freely, so this is in much better shape. So let's put that back together. So the last thing we did was took out this little back piece here. So that's going to fit right in where that pinion is. And we've got this little pin that slides in the bottom. Just needs to hold that in place. Then we've got the little spring, which I forgot to take out, but the spring just goes inside of there. And got this little clip. This looks symmetrical, so put it in either way. Tricky to get in, the spring wants to pop it back out. Alright, so we've got that in. Then the back cover goes on. We've got those screws to put it in. I still only have 2. I took out 3 screws that were in the old cover here that was short. I'm not going to put them back. Again, let's get the handle back on. I'm using the handle from the first unit that we were working on. The one that was good actually had a cracked handle. You can see here, the chunk broke off of it. So I'm just going to reuse this. All these parts are interchangeable. They're all the same model. So let's put these screws back in. Took my drill out to speed things up because I've been working on this for quite a while. Put that fork down. Alright, so now get back to it. This is what I really started the video on, is to assemble one of these. So I'm gonna grab back here. I've got a really nice bearing left over in my spare parts. So I'm just gonna get some grease. So I'm gonna start by putting some grease back inside of here where I cleaned it all out. Bearing, pack this with grease, that in there, goes right at the bottom. Alright, now we need a small gear assembly. We got one here, clean that up. grease too. Okay, now that's full of grease. Slide that in. That should slide right onto that gear on the inside. There we go. And in. Now we need a big gear assembly. Again, put that a little white. Actually, I have a cleaner one right here. Here's one I cleaned up the other day. Looks real good. Pack that full of grease too. And the grease is a really high torque. Alright. We're going to slide that right on the other gear. There, you should see that better now. So I've got both gears in there. Just gonna throw in some more grease. Now we need the really big assembly. And I've got one right here. Alright, we're going to pack this guy with grease. Punch inside of there. All the gears. Faces. Well, these 4 pins here hold the gears in place, so you gotta be careful they don't fall out. If they do, just realign the gear, pop it back in. Now this guy's just gonna drop right in on top of that other gear. It should slide right in. Once we have it aligned, and you have to turn the little gears a little to get them aligned properly. Use my screwdriver to turn those gears a little. So it's tricky here because the gear in the center, these 4 gears have to mesh with that gear, plus they have to mesh with the outer gear, or the inner gear, sorry, of the whole head assembly. All right, so now it's slid right in nicely. So all of that stuff now is lubricated and cleaned. Now I'm just going to check my chart, make sure that we're getting everything in the correct order. So we've got all the gears in, we've got the head. Next we have number 90. which is a washer. That would be this guy here. Alright, so I have a nice clean bearing here. Pack that with grease. Now that's going to go in. Alright, so I've got the cover here. I'm just going to throw some grease in there as well. Grease everything good. Now that's just going to slide right in. And now we need to put one of those little spring retainers in. Spiral retainer, spiral clip, whatever they're called. Just gonna clean this one up. It's a little gunky. Alright, we're gonna spiral this into place. That in. Now we've got that big ring. We've got the smaller spiral clip, whatchamacallit. We'll get that in. Give it a little push, make sure it's in the groove. So we had one unit fall apart on site because this spring, this clip came off. So I just want to make sure this one is very well seated. So far it's not moving, so I think we're good. Alright, so now we got the outer part done. A little more to do. Alright, so now we're going to put the inner parts in. So first we've got this little pin and we've got a small spring. So that's going to slide right on there. Let's grease this guy up. Grease everything. Grease the spring. And that's going to slide right in. Center hole. That's in place. Next, we're going to grab our new inner sleeve, our outer sleeve, put those together. We're just going to push on the inside of this inner sleeve, and that's going to allow those ball bearings to retract and have the inner sleeve attached to the outer. You can see that's in there now. We're going to grab our big spring, drop that over top, and that's just going to go right inside. Before I do that, I just want to grease everything good. This outer sleeve. I'm not going to grease the inner part because that's where the bolts go, and I'm not sure if that needs to be greased or not. We'll grease this guy good. Grease the end of that button. Grease inside. Put that together. Drop it in. Okay. Grease on that spring. It's going to go on top. They're all going to slide together. Now we need to tighten these set screws. This set screw is a little tight. In there so that they hold it in place, doesn't pop out, but I don't want it too tight. It needs a little bit of play. All right, so now that that's back together, we just need to go test it out. All right, I got 2 bolts here ready to go. Let's give it a shot. One. Beautiful. All right, so that's it for this video. If you guys found this video entertaining or helpful, I'd appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do, and I'll see you in the next one.